What have you learned?
Recently, I learned that all my assumptions about uh, what happens when I die or why I might be afraid of dying were baseless. So now I don't have reasons for that anymore, that fear. Though I still kind of have it.
Afraid of being dead or afraid of dying?
Um, so I have a hard time distinguishing
Okay.
between my fear of, like, I guess by dying you mean like the actual process, having to go through the minutes or hours of dying, or days or weeks.
Mm-hmm. But that's
I think
okay.
it's death,
Death.
death
Okay.
and pain.
Well, those are two different things. When you're dead, you don't feel pain, presumptively. I think it's
Yeah.
safe to say
So
that when you're dead, you don't feel pain. Dead men feel no pain.
yeah, I can. I think I. Well, I actually don't know, but I think I can agree with that.
Well, spend some time to get it clear
Um,
in your mind. The preparation for death and the contemplation of death is a root contemplation for getting one's priorities in life straight. The Buddhists are very big on this, and I can understand why. The Sufis don't neglect it either.
mhm.
Death may be bigger than birth in this world. So, questions?
Right. So yeah, my question about that is about the pain thing. So this is why I have trouble distinguishing. Um, I was on a plane and the plane started experiencing turbulence and I got scared, like a lot of people do. Um, but then I reflected on a story that you mentioned about the Dalai Lama when he got scared on the plane for his own life, and he realized how silly that was to him. And I had also just read
Well, whoa,
the
whoa, whoa, just
yes,
let me clarify on that. What he was shocked by was that he was concerned for his own life and as opposed to caring for the other people on the plane.
hmm,
And so he thought that that was a sign that he needed to practice more. But he laughed, and it's he is a but that's the Dalai Lama. That's a pretty high standard. But keep going.
yes. So I guess that wasn't what was on my mind. It was more about the assumption of being afraid of dying. So I had also just read Plato's Apology, Socrates' speech before they vote on him,
Oh, good, good,
and
good. Great
he
stuff.
said he mentions multiple times. Well, the one part that popped into my mind at this moment was when he talks about how the punishment might be that they administer, I forget what it is, some poison to kill him.
Hemlock.
Um, Hemlock, right? And he was saying how he's not going to beg for his life, blah blah blah, all the other parts of the thing. But he said, and by the way, why should I be afraid of death? It's an assumption that we all make. What might happen? Who knows? Maybe death is like the sweetest gift that any of us could give, and it's or get, and it's better than anything that we have here. And then I realized
Spoken like an old
that made me
man.
laugh.
Spoken like an old man.
Yeah. So they,
A little morbid.
yeah. I think he's in his 70s or something when that
Yeah, no,
happens,
he's
right?
ready to go.
Yeah.
I presume,
But even as a young man, when I thought of that on the plane, I realized that I don't actually know why I'm so afraid of death. I mean, of leaving people behind and all of that, and things that I'm fond of in life, sure, but I didn't understand why I'm so terrified of this thing that I just don't even know. It could be the best thing in the world. It could be neutral. It could be, I just don't know. It's not like a tiger there waiting for me or something that I should be afraid of. But like, but that confused me because I don't know if it's like the pain of dying that I'm afraid of or the actual death part. Because the death part doesn't make sense to be afraid of.
we'll contemplate it some more, but then contemplate animals and their relationship to death. They don't want to die
Right.
until the time comes. Why not?
why not be afraid of death, or why not
No,
contemplate it more?
no, you should contemplate it more. But if you look at it from a entropy point of view, or if you look at it from a just crude scientific point of view, isn't life the struggle against death or dissolution? I mean, if you could take a
Agreed.
paramecium, and it'll do what it can to stay alive. As Borges says, a tiger wants to remain a tiger. I mean,
Yeah.
so part of this is deeply entrenched biologically if you're at that level. Okay. At another level, this is a beautiful world. Why would you want to leave it as a young
I don't
man?
know. Well, dying might take you to another beautiful world. I don't know.
Okay. Well, you're looking at it in terms of gain and loss. So where does
Yeah.
that come from? It's a lifelong contemplation, and one worthy of a man. So spend more time thinking about dying, thinking about death, and preparing for it. Uh, when I was about your age or somewhere around there, I heard the Dalai Lama, somebody asked him what he was doing these days. And he said, I'm preparing for death. And he was a young man at the time. And it shocked me, it puzzled me. But now I understand. So get an early start and make your accounts with death. It's really important, I think. Death and life. I mean, death is what, without the pressure of death bearing on us, what kind of life would we really have? I've been listening to too much Carl Friston. He thinks that the pressure of the time limit is what drives a lot of the motion. Let's just leave it at there. No, that's a good contemplation. Just keep at it.
Hmm.
But without the pressure
Well,
of
then I
death,
have
life would be very, very different.
agreed. Then I have a follow-up though about pain, which I guess is not much of a follow-up.
Yeah, from death to pain. Woohoo! Go ahead.
I'm also so I have sometimes I have difficulty distinguishing between pain and suffering, which I understand are two separate things because I've had plenty of pain and sometimes I'm very opposed to it. Other times I can even, some pains I can conceive of as being pleasurable. And we've talked about this a little bit, but there's some pains that I just cannot get through without suffering from them. And I have a hard time separating them if that's even possible.
Well, then why don't you just make up another word for the suffering that's caused by pain?
Like dukkha or something? What do you mean?
No. Well, okay, you could use, well, I mean, basically, there's a spectrum. There's physical pain, pure physical pain,
Yeah,
correct? And then on the other end, there's
agreed.
suffering that's just caused by mental shenanigans, mental, like weirdness in your mind
Yeah,
or conflict. And then there's pain that's caused by, I don't know, let's say a headache, or pain that's caused by fatigue or in muscles or something. There's a whole spectrum. And yet we're using two words, pain and suffering. And what I'm saying is it's
yeah.
like the tints of the leaves in the autumn. There's 1,000, 10,000, 10 million different flavors. But we only use two words, pain or suffering.
Okay.
So just put another word in there. Pure physical pain with a slight psychological overlay. What do you want to call that? We have to get away from words. Words limit us, limit our ability to see and to think and to reason about things that matter. Right? And so the language is very, very limited here. It's like the word love in
Uh,
English. I mean, it's hideous. There's
well,
one
how
word
can
for
I convey?
ice cream and loving your country, loving ice cream, and loving others as yourself, it's all the same word. I mean, it's just like, it's so crude. I mean, you can't, what can you do with it? Make up a new word or something. I don't know. But don't think that way. Don't think in language. It'll cripple you.
Okay. I have a few questions about the Avatamsaka Sutra.
But
some
with
parts that
okay,
I read from
but
it.
one little thing on pain, physical pain.
Yeah.
Eventually, the body habituates. Usually.
Yes.
All right. So then, whatever it is, it decreases eventually. Whatever it is, it will pass.
Right.
Okay. Questions. Now that we've covered pain, death, and suffering.
There's some later things. I have some questions about from the Avatamsaka Sutra.
Yeah, these are monstrous
Some parts that
topics,
I've
by the way. They're monstrous topics. Pain, suffering, death, and dying. Those, any one of those questions could take up months. But those are things you have to explore on your own, pretty much. And just don't limit yourself with language. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to minimize them. It's just that, you have to do a lot of self-exploration.
Yes. My first question about the Avatamsaka Sutra is that I think you've said this a couple times in isolation, but not as a generality. Fair enough. I was thinking as I was reading that almost every line of this could be turned into its own contemplation or practice.
Yes.
That you could do throughout the day. So, for example, you did in your clinical practice years ago, treating everybody as Jesus, which is referenced many times throughout here. Obviously not as Jesus, but treating everybody.
Well, that wasn't
as
so much
Buddha.
my clinical practice, although it was my clinical practice. It was my Dharma practice.
Right.
While
right.
we're on it,
I just meant.
why don't you give me a page number on the flower ornament? Maybe in book 2.
Yeah.
It's just good to. I think I want to read a little bit each time.
Yeah. Is this appearance of Buddha?
Appearance of the Buddha, which has 2 different meanings. The Buddha appears, or this is what the Buddha looks like. Here,
About 161.
I just opened to 155. It's right here. To the north of this flower bank ocean of worlds, there is an ocean of worlds called treasuries of light spheres of lapis lazuli lotuses. Among the world systems therein is a land called Array of Blue Lotuses. The Buddha's name was King of Sound of the Banner of Universal Knowledge. Among that Buddha's vast congregation was a great enlightening being named Lion Stretch Light, who, with a group of enlightening beings as numerous as atoms in an ocean of worlds, came to the Buddha, each manifesting 10 kinds of clouds of beautiful trees of all kinds of fragrant jewels, which filled space without dispersing. They also produced 10 kinds of clouds of trees displaying arrays of all trees of infinite colors and forms. 10 kinds of clouds of trees adorned with all flowers. 10 kinds of clouds of trees adorned with spheres of light of the radiance of all jewels. 10 kinds of clouds of trees adorned with physical forms of enlightening beings, perfumed with all kinds of sandalwood. 10 kinds of clouds of trees inconceivably adorned with scenes of past sights of enlightenment. 10 kinds of clouds of trees of sun-like light from treasuries of cloths made from all kinds of jewels, and 10 kinds of clouds of trees emanating all kinds of pleasing sounds. Clouds such as these, numerous as atoms in an ocean of worlds, extended throughout space without dispersing. Having caused these clouds to appear, the enlightening beings bowed to the Buddha and presented them as offerings. They then each massively produced the northern quarter lion seats at the banks of lotuses with jewel lamps and sat cross-legged on those seats. I just, a little bit of that every day is kind of just nice. So you notice here that the imagery is quite vast. And one of the coolest things about the Avatamsaka is once you have absorbed it, then you can just call on it anytime you want. And you have these clouds of bodhisattvas there to aid you with whatever you need. It's an amazing faculty of mind that is much neglected these days. All right, go ahead. Your question. Sorry about that.
Well, yeah, so that was good actually for that, for example. If you read through it, even if you slow down, there are about 1,000 ways, more than that, 1,000 times, 1,000 times, 1,000 ways to visualize this that you just read and to walk through it and really appreciate it. But is that coning down too much?
It's a hologram. It's a fractal and a hologram. So you could take any part of the flower ornament. Every part contains the whole, and the whole has the parts. And so it's also fractal that way. And that's something you can't get until you've spent some time with it. But yes, any one of those could be a beautiful contemplation.
Actually, that makes the hologram thing you just said make sense. I forgot about that.
And that's how the brain, by the way, I think that's what we're going to discover, how the brain represents thoughts. Because we can't find thought in the neurons. And we can't find thought in any particular location. I mean, we have a few little neurons here that seem to represent a particular face or something like that, but that probably triggers a waveform. And these waveforms interact and reconstruct thought much more like a hologram than like a telegram. In other words, the messages between the neurons, that's outdated. And so I think that's what we're going to discover. Just like this world is like a hologram, a world of light.
Yeah.
Okay.
My second question is about what omniscience means, or how other people would pronounce it, omniscience or omniscience in the Avatamsaka. You spoke about it in a previous video, a couple videos ago, and you described it more as the enlightened mind is omniscient or omniscient in the sense that it can penetrate anything, meaning if it's applied to whatever in the world, it can learn and penetrate that thing.
It can penetrate anywhere. Yeah, but that's in that blessed state. In that state, there's no part of the universe that's not accessible to the awakened mind.
So it's not in the sense, omniscient is not
all-knowing. Omni means what? Why don't you just look it up?
Every or all.
Okay.
Okay, I'll look it up.
It also may need in every direction, but I'm not sure.
Well, the omni is a prefix, so it's like all, every, in all ways or places. Yeah.
Right, so omnidirectional. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. But omniscient doesn't mean all-knowing, like at once.
Well, the brain can't. It's not describable. I don't think the brain. There's limits to what the human brain can take in at once. Those limits are vastly expanded in certain mystical states. And in some mystical states, there is nothing in the universe that's not accessible to the omniscient, enlightened mind. It's very difficult. You can't describe it. It's not just omniscient, it's also omnipotent, which is even more ridiculous. You can't explain it. But remember, it's not the human moving around, it's the primary.
Yeah.
It's something else. Just like what you see here, these pixels that you're calling me are not me at all. And even if you were looking at my body, that wouldn't be me at all. What's happening is that that consciousness is looking at consciousness in an ocean of consciousness, and these are just the avatars that we put on. This is what it looks like to us on this planet, or as we call it, a planet. But it's all mine. Okay. Don't want to go. Okay.
I have one more question for the Avatamsaka, and it's from Detachment from the World.
So that's something to think about when you think about death. You should think about that. What does that mean? Because what you're calling death, I would not call death, and other people, you got to remember that discarding a form is not death, and taking on a form is not birth. Yeah. Okay, so go ahead. What now? But it's not a belief. It's got to be a knowledge. Right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Well, yeah, the knowledge is, like, that is so apparent, and yet I'm still, in some circumstances, for some things, afraid of death.
Well, you're in a human body. You're in a human body. You're in a human body or an animal body. Okay, next question. We got back on death somehow.
Yeah, 1078 to 1079 of the copy you have of the Avatamsaka Sutra.
All right.
Great enlightening beings have 10 kinds of ways of adornment. And then there are 2 kinds I wanted to talk about. This one, at the bottom of page 1078. They live by the right path, right knowledge, and right insight, yet they can appear to enter false paths without taking them to be true or pure, to cause the sentient beings involved in them to abandon false principles. This is their 7th way of adornment.
Okay.
They always maintain the Buddha's pure precepts, and their thoughts, words, and deeds are faultless, but because they want to edify immoral sentient beings, they appear to perform the acts of ordinary ignorant people, though they are already filled with pure virtues and abide in the course of enlightening beings. Yet they appear to live in such realms as hells, animality, ghosthood, and in difficulty and poverty in order to enable the beings therein to gain liberation. Really, the enlightening beings are not born in those states. This is their 8th way of adornment.
Okay.
So I know you, and I've read in Sufi books before about this, like a poor mendicant being an enlightened saint. Potentially, you don't know, unless if you're perceptive to be able to see, but...
well, there was a time when if you weren't poor, people wouldn't think you were a saint.
Right, but what about living in realms of hell's animality and ghosthood, like the hungry ghosts or animality? And it's hard to imagine an enlightening being, like somebody who's woken up and then entering those states, unless if it's something like the Sufi path of blame that I know very little about.
So what's the question?
The question is, there are enlightening beings that appear to live in ghost realms and animal realms and hell realms?
Absolutely. And when Jesus was walking among the prostitutes and the gamblers and the bad side of town, as it were, or whatever, he would have looked to all the world like he was cavorting with evil, right? Mm-hmm. But he was not. So you're still judging mankind has a tendency to judge the content by the container, and that's a real problem. They wouldn't know a saint if they saw one. They would probably crucify Jesus again if he appeared on this planet, as that man or whatever. You know what I'm trying to say? So the point is that you can't judge the content by the container. Now, as a generality, you make sure that people you associate with are good people. And that applies like tenfold for anybody that you're using as a teacher of certain things, right? But yeah, the Avatamsaka is pretty comprehensive, and it includes that clause just the way the Sufis do. And I think you can't judge the content by the container. As much as we'd like to, and as much as important as that is.
Yeah, I guess my problem is I still have trouble. Like if somebody were walking down the street, I live in New York, so there's tons of people on the street, and just by looking at them or walking around, I couldn't tell you. I mean, I could guess, but I couldn't actually tell you which one of these people is woken up.
You could not tell by the externals. You do not judge by externals. Do not judge a book by its cover. That's all. I mean, people would do well to say, well, what do I consider? I mean, how do I know if somebody's holy? If they have a long beard, that used to be a big one. If they wear a big turban and they wear, saintly clothes, if they look like a priest or a pastor, if they have a thick Bible that's with all the edges worn, is that how I know if somebody's sincere or not? Right? People use all kinds of bizarre externalities to decide. But they need to be, and one of the Sufis are very good about this, is people need to become more sophisticated in judging enlightened versus non-enlightened folks. And there's a book, this one here, which I'm recommending to some, The Zen Teachings of Juan Po. This is not Thomas Clary. It's not an enlightened translator. And so it's very interesting to go through and see the difference. And it'll be apparent once you become acclimated to illuminated, translators and things like that. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not to be a snob. It's the opposite of that. It's to refine your capacity to discern.
No, that makes sense.
It's not
agreed.
easy.
Like if I read two books from with enough what's it called, source material, it's pretty apparent to be able to tell who's an enlightened or what's an enlightened translation or what's not.
Okay, good.
For some things, I mean, I can be fooled, but like some things I read and it's quite apparent that like there's inconsistencies here. This doesn't comport with my understanding. But like
even that word enlightened gets this human world is problematic, and language even more so. But people should learn to discern, find the fine from the coarse, or from the good from the the bad in all things, but especially in these kinds of things.
But at the same time, I read these Zen stories, and there are Zen masters who say the moment that you walk 2 feet down the steps into the monastery or whatever, I could tell already you don't understand. You lack understanding.
Well, it's very apparent to those who know, but that's true almost in any field. Somebody says, I'm it in chemistry. He asks one question, and a real seasoned chemist knows. It's obvious what his level of understanding is. But it's really not that mysterious.
No, that's not mysterious. It's more of okay.
And so that's one of the things we've lost, not the planet hasn't lost it because it's still occurs in some places, but the testing and gradation or I don't know, we shouldn't get into this. It's too advanced, it's too esoteric for folks.
Yeah.
I was thinking more of the Zen traditions in this regard. But that had its problems too.
I have a different question.
Okay, question.
So when I go to, all right. I know that there can't be objects without awareness. That much is clear. But my question is whether there can be awareness without any content. Because when I go to sleep at night, uh, and I'm not dreaming. I don't know if that's like delta wave sleep or whatever. Almost everything there, everything is gone. But when I wake up in the morning, I still have some memory, and I think a lot of people have this experience where you know that there's maybe it feels like 20 minutes of just blank, inert, nothing, except you can do have a memory of that. Like it just passes by, time just passes by, but you're still aware of the fact that you were sleeping. So it's like there's nothing there, but there's still some memory of being alive.
When who goes to sleep? When what goes to sleep?
When this body enters sleep and the brain's activities slow down.
That's not where, I mean, what is that going to tell you about consciousness?
So I guess I'm wondering.
So the pixels that when you look at me, you're seeing pixels. You're seeing a mirage. You're seeing something that's a projection of your own mind and some convention of computer and camera imageries and so on and so forth. Right? You're not seeing what's there. You're seeing something else. I love Donald Hoffman, right?
Yes, that makes sense.
So where's the consciousness in that case? Where's the awareness? If it's not in the pixels and it's not in the skin, it's not in the image, then conventionally what you'd say, well, it's in the body, it's in this guy somewhere. This is what you'd say conventionally, but it's not there either. So where is it?
Agreed. That makes sense.
Okay, well, does that go to sleep at night?
It's not that it goes to sleep okay, like take a human being. A human being can see, smell, taste, touch. The body has these
Okay, so we're talking about animals now. We're talking about animals, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
What's the question about animals?
But if you blinded that animal, now it can't see.
Yeah, let's just put a blindfold on it.
No, but I want it to be blind. Like it has to be blind, pure blind.
All right.
It can't see anything. No sight. Now you have the animal, but like it's like an earthworm. No sight, or a mole.
A naked mole rat.
Yeah, like a naked mole rat.
All right.
Then you deafen the animal. Now it can't hear anything.
Right.
And let's say you burnt out you burnt out its tongue. It can't taste anything.
Ouch. Okay. Go ahead.
Then you numb the whole thing, analgesic everywhere, and it can hardly feel anything except its internal organs.
Ouch. Go ahead.
You cauterize its nose. It can't smell.
Okay,
anything.
got it.
No more smell. All right, you got it.
You've ablated its senses.
Right, you got it.
You've ablated its
Yes,
senses.
you just totally do away with all. Is there still anything conscious there?
What do you think? What do you think? Just think about it. Somebody did that to you. Would you still be conscious? Without your eyes, your ears, your nose, your throat, your tongue?
I mean, if I had
of
no
course you
eyes,
would be.
ears.
Yeah, you would be.
But then what even is there? What is there? What is there? Like, what is that? What is there?
What do you mean?
There must be something still then. Like, okay, if there's no...
Now, if you went to sleep in that state, would you still be conscious? I mean, in the sense you're using the word?
So, that's my question.
Well, just think about it. Just think about it. Or go do it. Go put yourself in a sensory deprivation tank.
But I can never... So, my question is, do objects depend on... There must be a subject for the object.
Look at the word object. What does that even mean, object? Look it up. Let's see the etymology of it.
So I've looked this one up a bunch of times, and I took
object
because this one is interesting. Yeah.
I'm wondering about that ob in front of it. Go ahead.
Ob means like it's something is standing opposed to, up against you. So object is something. Well, this is like obsession, but yeah. Here, let's do etymology. Yeah.
How about observe?
Object. Tangible thing perceived with or presented to the senses.
See,
But
it's
if you
even
want to know about
defined that way. It's defined as presented to the senses.
So yeah, ob means so it comes from
Obverse.
dr.a, which is to present, oppose, cast in the way of. Ob means in front of, towards, against, and yakare means to throw. So it's like something is thrown in front of or up against something else.
Okay.
Yeah, it's within the definition, basically.
So then right there, we got a problem because there's an object. Now, why don't we do something more interesting, like is money an object? Are angels objects? Are nations objects?
All your thoughts about all those things for sure, objects.
No, the thoughts about them are objects, but are the things themselves objects? Is a
No.
molecule an object? Is an atom
No,
an
your
object?
thought of no. Any one thing, because you can't separate it from the rest of. I mean, if you get down into the nitty gritty, you can't separate it. Whatever object you come up with from the rest of existence, and then you have a whole blob of existence that you have to worry about. So there's no object there.
All right.
But if you take one angel and then you separate it out, and you
I shouldn't have said angel.
about
I shouldn't have said angel. I shouldn't have said angel. Let's.
Sorry. Yeah.
So go ahead. So.
Chicken.
All right. So now, what's the question?
My question is, can there be awareness without some content? There's got to be some content, is what I think.
That's what you think. Now you need to observe. So now you need to do the thought experiments. You need to do the experiments. You need to figure out, how can I solve this question? And you need to solve it. Yeah, so you know. That's really important.
I'm having trouble with this one now.
Well, just keep at it. Just keep at it. That's a really important question. It's a good question. Good, solid question, and a perfect example of how you got to do some work. Some of this work you got to do yourself. Otherwise, you won't know it. You'll just believe it. You know?
Yeah.
That's no good.
Okay.
Question.
I have a few questions from a book translated by Thomas Cleary called Teachings of Zen.
Okay. It's a good book. Some of it difficult, some of it very easy. Teachings of Zen, Thomas Cleary. Published, I think, about 1998. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a selection of Zen teachings from a number of teachers across the history of Zen, 7th century to
a very rare book.
6th century.
It's very rare for someone, for someone to have this kind of background in Zen. First of all, he's understood deeply, studied in China, Japan, Korea, probably, also, and translated many of the root texts of Buddhism, the Blue Cliff Record, the Avatamsaka Sutra, so on and so forth. And so he's chosen some particular things that are important for modern Westerners. I don't recommend it as a beginning book, but it's good. Here you go. This is regard to your question. Page 43. The object of investigation. Kushan was asked, what is the basic object of investigation? He replied, how one has gotten to such a state. It's not the same kind of object, but okay. You got it. All right. What's the question?
I'm trying to pick one that's not too long. Oh. Okay. Page 4. 5 types of meditation method.
Okay, I'm going to read it.
Okay.
5 types of meditation method. Know the essence of mind. Its intrinsic essence is pure clarity. It is essentially the same as a Buddha. Know the functions of the mind. Its functions produce the treasury of teachings. When its activity is always silent, myriad illusions become suchness. Constantly be aware without stopping. When the aware mind is present, it senses the formlessness of things. Constantly see your body as empty and quiet, inside and outside communicating in sameness. Plunge the body into the realm of reality where there has never been any obstruction. Keep to unity without shifting. With constant presence, whether active or still, the student can see the Buddha nature clearly. This is Tao Xin, 580 to 651. Beautiful.
So my first question is about
Really
the functions of mind.
All right.
Is about the functions of mind. This is brought up multiple times in Zen as well as other traditions. The functions of mind. So what are the functions of mind? I know that it's basically creative.
No, it's
I know that
basically
it
not
can be
creative. No, it's basically just going through this stuff. It's the words and the teachings and the you know, the koans and the language and the functions of mind are the words and it just goes on and on and on and on. Yeah. Ugh.
Okay, I was thinking, all right, so then that's like the basic functions of your mind, like
The functions of
discriminating it
mind. Well,
does,
look here. They distinguish it. What page was it again?
4.
Well, look. The distinction is know the essence. Okay. There's two things. 1, know the essence of mind. And 2, know the functions of mind. Its intrinsic essence is pure clarity. It's essentially the same as a Buddha. With regard to the functions of mind, its functions produce the treasury of teachings. When its activity is always silent, myriad illusions become suchness. It was pretty clear, no?
Well, now when you made it mind as in like small mind, then yes.
It's
clear.
function versus essence in this passage.
Yeah.
The essence of small mind is the Buddha.
Well, yeah.
The function of small
That
mind
makes
is
sense.
all this.
Okay. All right. Well then. Okay. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Okay.
I have a question about the formlessness of things. And for that, I think this passage might be more helpful. 72. Page 72. Only mind.
Okay. Why don't you read it?
Okay. Only mind. Before you have realized objects are only mind, you produce all sorts of discriminations. After you have realized objects are only mind, discrimination does not arise. When you know all things are only mind, then you let go of the forms of external objects. But what about the earth, the mountains and rivers, light and dark, matter and space? With all things right before you, what principle of letting go can you speak of? Even if you understand this, you are still just halfway. You must realize there is yet another opening going beyond. That's Yunfeng Wenyue, who died around 1060.
All right. So what? What's the question?
That sentence, when you know all things are only mind, then you let go of the forms of external objects.
Yeah.
And then we heard about formlessness of things in the other one. And this is repeated pretty often. So if I just stopped all my thinking, like if I think back to the Satori state, or any time where my mental activity is low or basically gone, there's still, I would say there's still forms of things. So I'm confused what it means by letting go of the form of things, forms of external objects.
What are you seeing right now when you look into your screen?
The date, time, the image of
How
your
about,
house,
yeah, okay.
you.
Okay. What's behind that?
The screen itself.
In your mind, what's behind that?
Nothing.
All right.
I mean,
That was
like,
easy.
I'm,
I thought you were going to say, oh, well, you're there. Your body's there and you're talking to it or something like that. But okay, that's easy. If you say nothing, that's fine. But in that, that nothing contains all forms and images.
Agreed.
All right. But let's do it the other way.
So
you see pixels, right? You see pixels of a
Yeah.
human being talking to you, waving a pencil like this.
Yeah.
All right? That's what you see on your screen.
Yes.
Now, what's behind that?
The phone.
Okay, behind that.
Physically or like actually what it's made of?
Just whatever you want to say. It's fine. How about wires and
Okay.
electrons? How about that?
Yeah, wires and electrons.
All right, then what? A
Behind
cell
the
tower,
electrons
or
just,
some kind of, transformer. I mean, not transformer. Some kind of amplifying device, and then over here, there's a body, correct? Or did you work with me? Just go with me. What's okay? What's that behind the electrons?
all right. Behind the electron, there's the energy fields.
Okay.
The basic. Yeah.
Then what?
Then I would have to talk to the quantum people, the quantum fields, or emptiness as like just nothing.
Yeah.
Emptiness.
There's actually nothing here. You're talking into consciousness itself. You're embedded in consciousness, speaking to consciousness, and everything else is something that's been constructed as a illusion. The brain creates all of that stuff as a picture show.
So yeah, so that all makes total sense to me. That's drilled. I've done this 100 times. I keep looking into things and I can't find anything there.
All right, well then what's the issue with formlessness? What's the problem? What are you speaking to right now? What do you absolutely know you're speaking to?
Consciousness, or like I don't even know what to say. I couldn't call it anything. There's like a
So what's the problem?
There's no problem, but like there's still stuff here. Okay.
Of course there's stuff there. That's what your brain makes.
So then my question is, why is it like it's like this, but when I go to sleep, it's very fluid. Anything can turn into anything else. It can, like the world that gets created there, the formlessness of things makes so much sense because space and form or matter, they're totally flowing into and out of one another. Here,
So you know that your brain can create fake worlds because you do it every night.
yeah,
Fake trees, fake roads, fake people, fake buildings, fake doors. You know your brain can do that.
absolutely.
All right, it's doing it now. That's all.
Yeah.
That's why when you say you go to sleep or when you say you die, well, okay, you want to talk that way, like, you're some kind of, I don't know. But that's not correct. I mean, it's only one tiny arbitrary and ridiculous way to look at things. When you see
Yeah.
clearly, it's clear that that's not the way things are. Nonetheless, we go along with it, just like in your passage there about hanging out with riffraff. Yeah, we do that. Because emptiness is form, form is emptiness.
Okay,
Now,
but
in
then
in this
basically,
book, he's going to call it the void, which is unfortunate.
yeah,
Just an FYI.
yeah.
By the way, I have a huge amount of respect for John Blofield. I think he did a great job, and he's a marvelous guy. Go ahead. Before we stop.
So then basically there's one, I mean, we talked about this before somewhat, but uh,
You remember the butterfly of Changsu, right?
yeah, yeah.
Well, how have you decided so finally who's dreaming what? Have you closed your mind on that? When you say you go to sleep and you
No,
die, you're making a final decision, it sounds like to me.
yeah.
Okay, well, that's arbitrary in my opinion.
No, I thank you for pointing that out. That's actually, yeah.
Okay, so now there was some question somewhere about something else though.
Yeah, well, I have a bunch of more.
All
I
right, well,
have a
let's go.
bunch of
Let's go. Let's
questions.
go.
Okay, all right. Oh, I have one question about, so it's actually on these same lines. For matter and things, them all being made of the same thing, when I go into them, what's behind the electrons, what's behind the fields, blah, makes total sense. I'm having trouble knowing what sound or the other sense material is made of. So like, is my feeling of a headache, is that made of the same stuff as the pixels on my phone screen? And I don't know how to dig into it. Like when I look there, I can't find anything, but there's a sensation. I mean, it must.
How is nothing different from nothing? Is one
I guess it's
emptiness
a
different
different
than
kind
another
of movement.
emptiness? I mean, you can do that. I mean, it's fun too. I mean, if you like science, which I do, you can go down there and you can spend all day talking about pressures and air waves and photons and electromagnetic radiation and how you need air to have sound and water to have sound, but you don't need air to have light, right?
Yeah.
So you can spend a lifetime doing that. It's fun. It's a nice hobby. But is it real? Is it going to get to anything real? Highly unlikely. I mean, that question, I think, the difference between a headache and, what was it, a headache and sound? Is that what you were asking?
Sure. A headache, sound,
Well,
the
first you need to study both
matter.
subjects in a traditional way. Because I don't know if you're talking about a stress headache or a migraine.
Well, how about just is the taste of a strawberry the same emptiness as this pen I'm holding?
Find out. What is okay?
Well,
You
do you
call
have
that a
any?
pen. I don't see a pen. I just see a bunch of a pattern on a screen. Okay. Now you're telling me that that's different than a strawberry.
The taste of a strawberry.
Well, why are you mixing categories like that? What is the
Well,
color
because
of a bell
I'm
ringing? What is the
trying
color
to
of a bell ringing? That's the question you're asking me.
exactly. I mean, I'm trying to get
Okay, what is the
the
smell?
spiritual
What is the
traditions.
smell of the color yellow?
No, I don't know if that's the same. Is that the same question?
A
So, all right,
taste
here's
is
where I'm
one
coming
thing.
from.
Okay, I don't know. First of all, do you want to talk in terms of absolute reality, or you want to talk in relative reality? In which case, these are basic questions. But as far as I can tell, those
No,
are
I
two
want
categories.
absolute.
One's a sensory experience, and the other one's presumptively an object. So decide.
Absolute reality.
Okay, what do you want to know?
When I read from all the major spiritual traditions, Sufism, Buddhism, Christianity, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I'm told of a unity of being. There's one God, He's the only one.
Okay.
When I, in my experience,
Whose
or in this
experience?
experience, okay, there, there are multiple qualities of this unity, and I'm trying to figure out if it really is a unity. I mean, intuitively,
Okay.
it makes
So the
sense. It's a
Buddha. This
unity,
is why the
but
Buddhists divided things up into the six consciousnesses. They're separate consciousnesses. Is the Buddhist way of formulating this? The eye consciousness, the ear consciousness, the olfactory consciousness, right?
hmm
Because those
right,
qualia are
right,
different.
yeah.
Okay, now what? If you want to go into synesthesia and you want to talk about the taste of the color C relative to the smell of the color of B flat, you can do that, but I don't know where that gets us. I mean, that's just the brain doing weird stuff. You know
Yeah.
synesthesia, right? So I
Yeah,
don't
of
understand why
course.
you're
Yeah.
doing this to the categories.
Well, I'm trying to resolve the categories
All
to
right,
see
what
if
are the
this
categories?
unity of being
Give me
thing.
your categories, because give me your categories.
Smell the six senses.
Okay, well, how
Smell,
about form,
taste,
formlessness,
taste.
and desire? I mean, you could invent categories, but I can't discuss every kind of like category you want to invent. Why don't we use the Buddha form, formlessness, and desire, or something
Sure.
else? You know, because we could go on forever with that.
Yeah. Well,
What about an
I
itch?
I
What is the color of an itch? What is the
I guess
taste
this is
of
why the
pressure on your?
Zen.
If you put pressure on your finger? What's the taste of that? Where
Well, I
are we
guess
go?
this is why the Zenists say not one. Is this why they say not one, not two?
No,
Like, I don't
that's not why
know.
they say that. I think you need to spend more time on it and see
Okay.
where you're going off to the, you know.
Right. Okay.
Next question.
Um, okay. Page 16 of Teachings of Zen, the Thomas Cleary book we just talked about.
All right. A Buddha is one who does not seek. In seeking this, you turn away from it. The principle is the principle of non-seeking. When you seek it, you lose it. If you cling to non-seeking, this is the same thing as seeking. If you cling to non-striving, this is the same thing as striving. Thus the diamond cutter scripture says, do not grasp to truth, do not grasp untruth, and do not grasp that which is not untrue. It also says, the truth that the Buddhas find has no reality or unreality. Pai Chang, who I think appears also with Long Po. Okay, what's the question?
Clinging to non-seeking, this is the same as seeking. So clinging to non-seeking, for my own clarity, is that like when people enter quietude, or they're all about, oh, I'm not looking for anything, it's just as is, being as is, whatever.
Some people, they hear that and they go, oh, so this whole thing is bogus. There's no path, there's no reason to meditate, there's no reason to contemplate, there's no reason to learn or read sutra or scripture or anything like that. I can just sit here because there's nothing there. That's some people, right? They exit our story here. They just exit the story because clearly they're not.
Okay.
All right? Now, there's more serious students who decide, okay, because they reach another stage, right? So it all depends on what stage you're at, how you interpret this, and how it should be interpreted.
Okay.
But remember, he's talking to Zenists that have been doing this for like 5 years at minimum, right? And who are attached to their scripture. I mean, they've memorized the friggin' sutra. We're in no danger of that, right?
Right.
Okay, so
I see. But my second question, thus the diamond cutter scripture says, do not grasp truth, do not grasp untruth, and do not grasp that which is not untrue.
Yeah.
So my first question is, you can grasp truth? Is that like becoming way too basically attached to emptiness or something like that? Because it doesn't seem like something you can
it's
grasp.
Not that.
Okay, can you describe that?
Describe what?
How can you grasp truth?
That's just okay. All of this is very difficult because we're trying to put into words something that really cannot be put into words. What does it say exactly?
Yeah.
And if you take a sentence out of the paragraph and you don't think about the what page is it? We're gonna have to stop.
16.
Okay, this is the diamond cutter scripture.
Yeah.
So what's the question?
Well, I want to make sure I'm not making the same errors that are being described here. So the diamond cutter scripture says, do not grasp truth.
Okay, another way to put that for the
untruth.
time being, another way to put that would be, do not grasp at truth. Don't try and grab it. That's all.
Okay.
But keep going though. And don't grasp untruth. And do not grasp that which is not untrue.
That one also trips me up. So,
if you watch mathematicians and physicists, if you watch mature mathematicians and physicists discuss continuity, or the use or lack of use of infinity, I'm not a mathematician, but if you see them struggle with whether or not math can describe this world or not, you'll see how they both have to they have a similar kind of struggle. Like, does continuity exist on this planet or in this universe? For a long time they said no. Then they said yes. Then they realized that if they're going to go any further, they have to be able to say yes and no at the same time, right?
Right.
And so this is where you get when you have to get to more elegant things that are beyond the concept, beyond the constructs. So you can't grasp this because it's true. You can't grasp that because it's untrue. And you mustn't grasp at something that's not untrue either. It's more nuanced than words. And what is the last sentence of that passage?
It also says the truth that the Buddhists find has no reality or unreality.
All right. Well, there's a good question for you. What does that mean?
Well, I can't say it's real because
Yes, you
when I
can.
dig into it,
Yes, you can.
no,
You can say it's real.
I can't say it's only real.
Well, nobody said anything about only. Well, that's real.
Well, yeah, I could call it real. I could also call it unreal.
Correct. You can
And
say
I
it's
wouldn't
both
call it
real
only
and
one or the
unreal.
other.
You can say it's both, too.
Agreed. Yeah, that
And then you
makes
can say that
sense.
it's neither.
Yes.
Now, welcome to the world of trying to articulate things that can't be articulated. Suchness, the reason the word suchness is there is because there's no, you know, this is where the sutra and the contemplation and a lifetime of devotion to seeking what's there, what's really true, what the truth is, and not accepting anybody else's opinions about it. You have to learn for yourself. Now, we have the aid of, centuries and centuries of different types of people, all the same kind of people, but from these different cultures and different languages and different times and epochs and situations, struggling with the same thing. So we can build on that. And thank God for that. But ultimately, this is every man's individual struggle. And one reason why it is because it cannot be put into concepts or words. Would we expect any less of God or truth or beauty itself? And yet, everyone finds the same thing. And not everyone, but the people that find it find the same thing, right?
Yes.
And that equation, truth and beauty, what the hell does that, what is that about? For example.
Yeah, that didn't make sense before, but I would say it makes sense now.
All
I
right,
have the
well,
hardest
keep
time
going,
with,
keep going.
well, yeah, okay.
So, the word real and unreal, both of those words are inadequate. Is inflation real or unreal? I'm talking about monetary inflation.
I mean, it's real. Things cost more.
But it's also unreal. It's just a way of thinking. It's relative to
Yeah,
what things cost before. It's all relative.
yeah,
So our relative relationships, are those real or not? Well, by convention, we can do it either way. So the point is, don't get caught up in the words here. You have to kind of like skate or surf on top of the words and through the words and around the words and think about, okay, this man is talking to a bunch of 20, 30-year-olds, in some hermitage that's been around for 150 years. And these guys are getting encrusted in the doctrine, and they're just going through the motions. They aren't understanding the reality or the lack of reality or whatever. And he's trying to help them as best he can. And he's adapting the words for the situation. And so it's in that spirit that Clary puts this book together. It's got all kinds of things, some of them diametrically opposed, or so it would seem. Right?
Yeah, he does.
And so it's subtle and it's nuanced, and all of this is. And so it takes a mature person and whose ducks are in a row and isn't worried about, having done this to somebody else or this or that or whatever. They got to have some space in their life that's free of the usual garbage of conflict about other people and what they think, or, or I'm going to do this or that. Am I going to get this raise? Or, you got to have some space to do this work. And then you do it. And then you get paid for the work. You get paid like no one else gets paid. Because you have a wonderful life, a peaceful life. And more. Hopefully. You could also get crucified very early, or put to death. If you talk too much. Going back to Socrates, where you started, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Is this making sense?
Yes, that was very helpful for that one and others actually. So thank you.
One last one before we stop.
Yeah. 41, page 41.
Just ask the question. What's the question?
I don't.
You could read the sentence and ask a question about that, but all right, I'll look at it. There's no question or what?
Well, alone. So you. Well, or you could just go back to 72 that we already talked about. When it said, when you're only halfway, even if you understand this, when we were talking about the formlessness of things, only mind, everything, objects are only mind, page 72.
Yeah.
So then it says, after discussing when you know all things are only mind, you let go of the forms of external objects, all of that. The last sentence of that is, even if you understand this, you are still just halfway. You must realize there is yet another opening going beyond.
Yeah, there is.
So even when and there's nothing more can be said about that. Like even when you get to, so you can look at the world as there's forms. Then you can go beyond that and see, all right, there's actually the formlessness of the things that I all see, the thing we just talked about earlier.
Formlessness
So
or undifferentiated suchness?
Yeah.
All right.
But then but then even when you see in that both ways, or can see in both ways, that's only halfway. There's another opening to go through.
Yeah.
That's what that's saying?
Yeah. And that's, putting it halfway is putting it generously. This universe, this situation we're in is vast, and it's mysterious, and it's open to us if we put in the right attitude, approach, and it keeps going. It's beyond miraculous, beyond mysterious. It's like, holy moly, what is going on here? Really, I'm serious. And so there's not an end to it, that from the human point of view. From the point of view of, what is it Eliot says? Should I roll it into a ball, the universe into a ball? Right? But first things first get to the point where you can understand what these guys are talking about, or understand, or have a comfort in knowing what the hell you're doing, who you are, and what the hell you're doing here, what the hell here means, right? And then we'll worry about the other stuff, right? But as far as I can tell, it doesn't stop. There's no reason to believe there's a because what happens when you just leave this world altogether, for example? What's next? If next is the right word.
Another world?
So see what I mean? There's plenty to keep you busy for a lifetime, I promise. Okay, sir?
Okay.
All right. Take good care. Keep at it. Keep working. And good. All good. All right, sir? Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See ya.